By now you've probably heard of the NBA's dreaded second apron. It's already loomed large this summer as the league's highest spending teams try to navigate these murky new waters. So let me explain what the second apron is, how it's shaking up the association, and how it will change the NBA as we know it going forward. The first thing to understand is the NBA's complex soft cap system. Unlike the NFL and NHL, there's no hard salary cap every team must adhere to. The NBA's cap can be exceeded for a number of reasons. Teams can go over the cap to re-sign their own players and to sign minimum contract players, for example. And in fact, most teams will spend each season over the cap. There's then a luxury tax system to punish teams that go too far over the cap, and a repeater tax designed to punish teams who exceed the tax threshold in 3 out of 4 years. Essentially, the further you go into the tax and the more often you go into it, you pay an increasingly higher tax rate on every dollar spent over the threshold. That's how a team like the Warriors can end up paying nearly $177 million in luxury tax payments despite only being about $43 million above the tax threshold last season. There are also various exceptions teams can use to sign players, depending on whether they are taxpayers, non-taxpayers who are over the cap, or have room under the salary cap. Under the old CBA, teams that used certain exceptions or acquired a player via sign and trade were hard capped at something called the apron, a certain amount above the tax threshold. The new CBA has 2 aprons. Now, there are still ways for teams to hard cap themselves at one of the aprons, but the real story is what happens to teams that can and do go over those aprons. The first apron is set about $7 million above the tax threshold. First apron teams can't sign buyout guys who made more than the non-taxpayer mid-level exception before they were waived. So say goodbye to expensive contenders adding former stars on the cheap late in the season. They also can't take back more salary than they send out in trades and can't use their existing trade exceptions. The second apron is the real game changer though. In addition to those first apron restrictions, second apron teams can't use the mid-level exception, can't trade multiple players in the same deal, can't sign and trade their own players to acquire others, and can't send out cash in any trades. Finally, teams above the second apron at the end of the regular season will have their first-round draft pick 7 years away frozen so that it can't be used in any trades. And the only way to unfreeze it would be to deduct the second apron in at least 3 of the next 4 years. So for example, if a team is above the second apron on the last day of the 2024-25 season, its 2032 first-rounder will be frozen, and the earliest they could trade it would be after the 2027-28 season. And if after having their future pick frozen, a team remains above the second apron in at least 2 of the next 4 years, then that frozen pick moves to the bottom of the first round no matter how poorly that team performs. The roster building restrictions are already crippling enough, but those delayed draft pick ramifications could be devastating for teams in the long run. So you can see why, other than a team reaping the benefits of surefire contention, no one wants to cross that second apron. Now, on the surface, the new CBA discourages people like Clippers owner Steve Ballmer, the richest owner in all of pro sports with a net worth over $130 billion, from blowing past the tax threshold in ways even other billionaires can't. It's designed to act as an unofficial hard cap that levels the playing field in a league already seeing nearly unprecedented parity. But an unintended consequence will be the inevitable breakup of well-built, homegrown teams whose organizations have scouted, drafted, and developed well. Even while contending for titles, how many years will the Celtics' new owners accept the second apron penalties before splitting up the 2 J's? Once Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren graduate from their rookie-scale contracts to max-level deals in a couple years, will the Thunder be able to keep their young big three together? It seems the owners have come up with a scheme whereby they can spend less without the public scorn that usually accompanies such penny pinching, as they can now blame it on the very real bad-for-business restrictions that come with the new aprons. Here's the question though. Does a more balanced league, where teams rise and quickly fall before dealing with the penalties of getting too expensive, lead to more league-wide interest? Or does more frequent roster turnover and no dynastic super teams lead to a league full of teams and a league itself with no identity?